Hey guys, so your homework this week is about angles and about estimating what type of angles and what the degrees are on the angle. Okay, so firstly I'm going to show you the different types of angles and different versions of them, just to get that back in your head if you forgot. And then I'm going to look at estimation and trying to estimate what the angle is without a protractor. Okay, so first we're going to look at the different angles. The first angle we're going to look at is a right angle. The reason we're looking at a right angle first is because it helps us recognise other types of angles, so we need to know what one is. Now, as you can see, a right angle is 90 degrees. Now, out of all the angles, a right angle is one of the easiest ones to spot, and this is for two reasons. Firstly, because it is always 90 degrees, and other types of angles we look at might be different degrees. This one will always be 90. And secondly, because of the way we mark the angle. If you can see there how we mark with two straight lines that form sort of a square in the corner where the two lines meet. This is the only angle that we mark like this. All the other angles which we'll see, and you've seen in class, we mark with a curve. As we can see here, we've got lots of right angles, all marked with a straight line, so we know the right angles, and they're all just rotated to point different directions. Because they're all 90 degrees, if we rotated them round so they all point in the same direction, they would all be exactly the same. The next type of angle we're going to look at is an acute angle. Now, an acute angle is between 0 and 90 degrees, which basically means it is smaller than a right angle. That's why we look at the right angle first, so we can recognise them. If we have a look at this angle here, we don't know what degrees it is, but we know it's an acute angle because when we look at it, we can see it is smaller than the last angle we looked at, which was the right angle. As we can see here, we've got lots of different acute angles rotated round, pointing in different directions. On this one, I've got all the degrees on there, so you can see that all those angles are less than 90 degrees. And if you look at them, if we didn't have those degrees on, we'll probably still be able to see that they're less than 90 degrees, less than a right angle. The next angle we're looking at is an obtuse angle. Now, obtuse angles are between 90 and 180 degrees. Okay, so it means they're bigger than a right angle, but they're less than a straight line, because as you can see, we know a straight line is 180 degrees. So as you can see with the angle that we have on screen, it is bigger than a right angle. So we don't know what degrees this angle is because it's not marked on and we haven't measured it with a protractor, but we can see it's bigger than a right angle and it's less than a straight line. So we know this is an obtuse. Okay, so here we have a lot of different obtuse angles rotated round, pointing in different directions. Again, we've got the degrees on there, and they're all between 90 and 180, which means we know these are all obtuse angles. Now, if we didn't have those degrees on again, we will be able to tell the obtuse angles because we can see they're in between that right angle and a straight line. Some of them are a bit harder to tell, like the 94 and the 168, because they're very close, but if you look close enough without those degrees, you still would be able to tell. So now we're moving on to the reflex angle. Now this is the angle that we've looked at the least in class. Okay, now a reflex angle is between 180 and 360 degrees. So that means it's between a straight line, okay, and a full angle around a point. Now, as you can see with the angle on the screen, it is clearly bigger than a straight line. That's all we need to know really to recognise them. So if your angle, when you're looking at it, like that one on screen there, we can clearly see that's bigger than a straight line. We know we have a reflex angle. Now here we have multiple reflex angles. We can see there that they're all bigger than 180 degrees because we have the degrees on, but if we didn't have the degrees on there, we would all be able to see they are bigger than a straight line. Again, the one that would have been hardest to tell is 192, but if you look close enough, you would have been able to see that that isn't a straight line. Now, one thing we do have to be careful when we're looking at angles to try and tell which they are is where the markings are on. If you could see, if we had the curve, which was asking us which angle to look out for, on the other side of the angle, then it would be a different type. So you always have to look at where that circle is. Now reflex angles are quite large, so they're one of the easy ones to recognise, and just remember they're between 180 and 360 degrees. Right, okay, so that's the different angles, but now we're going to look at estimating them. Okay, now estimation when it comes to angles is a hard thing. It might seem like it's an easy thing because you're just having a guess, but it's not. It's actually quite hard to have a good estimation. So I'm going to show you a few tips on how to do it. So, as you can see, the green line there is showing us a right angle. If I put that in, you would know that's a right angle. Okay, we know right angles are 90 degrees. So if you see it looking like that, has our square in rather than the curve, remember, it is a right angle. Now, first angle we're going to look at estimating is an acute angle. So an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. So if this is our 90 degrees, what it means is any angle that we have in here, okay, so we could have that one, or we could have a one like that. Any angle within there is going to be an acute angle, so that's quite easy to see. Now, sometimes our angles won't always be with the line straight up. If that's the case, there's a simple fix of that. Just turn the page. It's exactly what I do. I just turn my book round, so I've got one line going up, and I find it easy to estimate. Now, that's easy enough to estimate what type of angle it is, but it's harder to see what the degrees are. Now remember, this is 0 degrees, and this is 90 degrees. So if I had an angle like this, okay, what would you estimate that would probably be? Would probably be, I'd say, around 80 to 85. Because I know if the line goes here, it is 90 degrees. So if the angle's near there, then I know it's around 80, 85. If I had one like that, what do you think that angle would be? Now it's just rough, but looking at that, I would say that angle is probably 45 degrees. The reason I think that is because I think that's probably about halfway. And half of 90 is 45. Okay? So again, using the same principle, if I have that angle, I'd probably say that's maybe 5 degrees, 10 degrees. Okay, an estimation doesn't have to be perfect because it's very close to the 0. Where it gets harder is if you have an angle like this. Okay, it's not really close there, not really close there, not in the middle. Then we have to have a bit more of a guess. We know that this line halfway, roughly, is about 45. So we can use that to tell that. So we know our answer is going to be between 0 and 45. Okay, I know halfway between that's about 22, and it's closer that way. So I'd say this angle is probably about 25 to 30 degrees. And that's how we would get our estimation. Okay, so now we're going to look at some obtuse angles and how we're going to estimate them. Now, it's basically the same principle as the acute angle. So we have our line here, and obviously if your line isn't straight up again, just turn your book, turn the page, turn the angle, so the line's pointing up so it's easy to see. We know an obtuse angle is between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So it's between a right angle and a straight line. So we know any angle that is in here would be an obtuse angle. Okay? That is easy to see. So that one would be, that one would be, that one would be. Okay? That's easy to see. What's harder, again, the same as with the acute, is working out roughly what degrees it is. Now, if I've got this line along here, okay, we can see it's close to a right angle, it's close to 90 degrees. So we know that that is probably around 100 degrees. Same with the other end, okay? If the line's down here, we know it's close to 180 degrees, so I'd probably guess it about 170. Alright? Again as well, we can think, if we've got one that looks about halfway, so we have that angle, we know that that's probably around 135, because 135 is halfway between 90 and 180. And we can use those different angles, so 90, halfway 135, and a straight line 180, to work out other angles. So if I've got that line, if I had another angle here, okay, I know that that angle's probably, well, we know it's between 90 and about 135, so we probably guess at 110, 120, around that, okay, depending exactly on where it is. And we'd use that to estimate what angles are. Again, with angles, when we're estimating, don't worry about getting it perfect. It's very rare that you will get the angle exactly, obviously, unless it's a right angle. So don't worry about what your answer is. Right, now reflex angles are the ones that we've looked at least in class at the minute. And a reflex angle is an angle that is more than 180 degrees. Okay, so we know a full turn is 360 degrees. So a reflex angle is between 180 degrees and 360. So if we have our line straight again, remember, turn the paper. I know I keep saying it, but it's an easy tip. Okay, any angle that we have that's past, okay, that's past 180 degrees is a reflex angle. Again, that's easy to see. We can see that that's past a straight line, so we know it's a reflex angle. Where the harder part comes again is estimating what it is. Now, with the reflex angle, we have 180 degrees of different angles it could be, rather than just the 90 like we have for the acute and the obtuse. So this is where it gets a bit harder. Now, if I had an angle here, quite close to 180, I could probably guess at about 190, 195, okay, 185. If I had an angle up here, practically a full circle, I know this is 360 degrees. So I'll probably say that is about 350, 355 maybe, okay, and that will get us a close estimation. Now, if we had a one that looked like this, okay, so it looked like a right angle, but the angle was on the outside, that line there would be 270 degrees, because that 270 is halfway between 180 and 360. So that would know that line there, about 270. It's not going to be perfect because I've just drawn it and we're only estimating. So again, we would use that to work out other angles. So if I had an angle that was down here, okay, I know it's between 270 and 180. So it's about halfway between there, if we're looking at it. That line's halfway between 180 and 270. So I would probably have a guess with that angle at it being probably about 220 degrees. Now remember, estimations don't have to be perfect, so don't worry about them too much, especially the reflex angles, because we haven't looked at them much in class. Now, if you've got any questions or anything like that, put them in the comments, okay, or send me a message and I'll try and get back to you if I can. If not, ask me in class and I'll help you. What I'm also going to do is, for the description for this video, I'm going to put an online game that is a game estimating angles, where you have to draw the angle, estimating where it would be. If you want to play that before you have a go at your homework, it might help you, okay? Or if you think you're okay with your homework, do your homework, have a little go afterwards. It'll make sure you really understand it in your head.